Hey everybody, so good Monday evening. It's 10:09 p.m. EST. I know I'm starting a little bit late, 10 to 10 now, but thank you guys for joining me on the next Unhelpful Thinking Styles. It's like the one earlier which I talked about, and the which is just kind of like all the things that which I will review later on, so just as a heads up. But I figured it's a good idea to do it on Monday, because Monday mental health also makes kind of sense. It's also catchy. Um so yeah, let's talk about that for a second. Let's just talk about how did your day go? Like, think about all the good stuff you did today, and don't discredit some of the things that you went through, because usually Mondays are kind of some of the days that actually, nobody really wants to deal with that, I guess. But I mean, here you are, you're doing okay. So I mean, kudos, congrats to you. So I think, like I said, I think doing this on Mondays would kind of set a precedent over the rest of the week. So I'd like to think this would be better to do as such. So anyways, before I get into like part two, just as again a disclaimer, I am just a graduate student in counseling education, so there's not really much. I mean, I'm not like a full professional yet, but I think that once I start getting into this a little bit more, like, you guys will be able to hopefully rely on me, or I mean, if anything, just more like other people who are in the counseling realm. So I mean, like, when you're considering getting a counselor, just make sure you're not like, you're not like, you're being a little bit more open-minded. Of course, that the counselor has to do the same as well, but we can't do everything, and as much as we want to help, we'll be there's some counselors that will be able to take some of the things that you can do, while some can't. And I think a really good counselor would be able to pass that client to the person who's actually competent in doing so. But yeah, please, this is what I do this for. Like, I want to make sure you guys, like, if you find this helpful, like, just let me know in the comments below, in the stream, in the chat, if anything that I could do can assist you in some capacity. So that's what I do this for. So yeah, a disclaimer again, I am just a graduate student in who's just finishing his first year at Western Michigan University for counseling education. So so I classify myself as a life consultant, not necessarily a counselor, but I am taking a lot of the techniques and information from a lot of my classes that I have passed, that I have learned over the course of the year, and even more. And I would hope it would do you guys well when we kind of just talk about when you guys need someone to talk to, or like when I'm trying to give a little bit more information on the subject. So anyways, let's wrap right up into let's quickly go over some of the review for the unhelpful thinking styles for the last part. So we went through 5 different ones, so in order they were jumping to conclusions, and so that's basically where you're like mind reading, or like predicting the future, where you're just like, oh, I know what this person is saying, when, like, when you're in that relationship, like, and you're like really cool with this like huge romantic relationship, but you guys read each other's minds, and you try to get to that a little bit more. You kind of overgeneralize it to the point where you think what he or she are talking about, but then you're really not. It's like a worse situation than that. This is the best I got. It's like 10:13 at night. Sue me. No, don't, please. So yeah, mind reading is basically where you think you know what people are thinking, unless you're a clairvoyant. Yeah, so this is the it's just my mental health tips and tricks. I wouldn't say tricks, but just a mental health thing. So thank you for joining in. But yeah, so there's also fortune telling, which is part of it, where you think you know what's going to happen. That's where the jumping conclusions comes to. Like, for example, if I guess if you're being bullied at school, no, if like somebody hates you at school, you think it's going to end up bullying, and then you're going to get expelled. That's jumping to conclusions. I'm not sure if it's a real thing, but I mean, I know bullying is a real thing. Don't get me wrong. Just saying. But the jumping to conclusions is just an unhelpful thinking style that kind of you feel like you kind of bring in that misfortune to yourself based on some of the negative things around you, and that kind of goes into one of the newer ones that we talk about later on. The next one is all or nothing thinking, and the last thing I used was the black and white, when you could really do the gray area, and I used a Star Wars reference for the last one. You could check out the last video that I did for that, and that's what the black and white thinking is. You know, it's like neither one or the other, but it's not really something in between, when sometimes you just have that, you can have that that gray area, that like middle ground. A lot of people don't do that, and so just like understanding that there's almost always a middle ground in a lot of your decisions. Overgeneralization, so basically seeing a pattern based upon a single event and being overly broad as in the conclusions that you draw. So basically saying like, oh, if girls don't like me, like if this girl broke up with me because she thought I was smelly or something, and you really weren't, let's talk about this. Like if somebody broke up with me because I'm fat or whatever, that means this say member of the someone that I'm interested in is not going to be like, those types of people aren't going to be interested in me anymore. You're deciding that for yourself. You're overgeneralizing that. For example, if for me, I'm going to just say I'm a heterosexual male, this girl doesn't like me, so I just assume all girls don't like me. Don't think about it that way. That's an overgeneralization. Like one person, there's so many people out in the world, like, and it doesn't just necessarily attach itself to like relationships, but you could also do something else with it. So I mean, and like I said, you are totally fine as long as you don't really overly broaden everything. The fourth thing was the mental filter, and so that's like really when you're focusing on something. A lot of people do this when you're focusing. When you're focusing on the negative, when you're focusing on the negative parts rather than the positive, or even vice versa, really. So you're not really taking, you're like that strainer that doesn't work, like for spaghetti. You're taking everything in, but you're not really like taking either the good stuff in this example. Like you're only taking the negative things, where you're like, oh man, I may have done this, but like I totally still failed that class anyway. You're not taking into account that, yeah, you did your hard work, but in the end you still failed. That's not the point. You're supposed to feel like, even though you did fail the course, you at least worked your ass off. You have the ability to do so, and you should take pride in the things that you do, as long as it's obviously not bad. But yeah, that's the mental filter. I had a way better description of it in the last video, so just like I said, if you're interested in seeing the part 1, go that way, or whatever. Disqualifying the positive. So again, going off the mental filter, you're just saying things that don't count. Yeah, see, there you go, like looking at things in a positive way. So yeah, no, and I totally agree. Okay, Shiz. Disqualifying the positive, saying that things don't count. So that works hand in hand with that mental filter. You're discounting or discrediting yourself from being a good thing. Like nobody hires a doctor for this example. Like nobody hires a doctor and says like, and that doctor says just like, oh, I'm an okay doctor. No, you don't. I wouldn't trust that doctor, you know, like you kind of discredit some of the things as a doctor that you go through, all like the thing like for what's it called, for med school, like you have to do that anyway, you know. So why would you discredit yourself in saying, oh, it doesn't count, I still, like, you know, I didn't save a life? And no, you don't look at it that way. Like you still also helped your fair share of people, you know. So, and that's like a little bit more of like a broader sense. I'm pretty sure there's not many doctors that are like that, I think. But just understand that you should never just think about all the good things you've done, that someone, at least someone out there, you know, actually appreciated that that thing you did for them. Everything is shaking, that thing you did for them. So don't ever take that, and like don't ever like disqualify that and say that that even saying a smile, like giving someone a smile, you know, like, oh, that was creepy, but like don't disqualify that either. You never know, it may actually make someone feel better. So anyways, yeah, so that's all of them. Jumping to conclusions, all or nothing thinking. overgeneralization, mental filters, and then disqualifying the positive. So the next 5 to go over would be, so with the first one is magnification. So this is one of the new ones. Magnification, so it's catastrophizing, so it's like catastrophes-ish related, and minimization. So you're kind of like either blowing things out of proportion or minimizing some things. Like, it's like if you're like in this heated, like if you're in a heated argument with somebody, minimization is kind of where you're making it seem like it's less important. Or like magnification, where you're kind of like, if you stub your toe into something, and then have you ever heard of the phrase like all hell breaks loose? I think that kind of makes the point, you know. So and that's what I mean when you're, it's like one really good example for magnification is, as let's say a you know what, I will use something that I had used a while ago, and my nose is about to blow. Oh god, sorry. Magnification is a middle schooler, for example, would be like a really great idea, because when you're in middle school, I'm pretty sure, if I don't know if you said this before, but you probably thought like, oh no, if someone hates me here, it's the end of the world. And see, the thing is, I'm relating it to childish thoughts, because it's easier to, well, one, to relate to, because we've almost always been there. Unless you were really cool as a kid. I wasn't. I was okay. But you don't, shoot, let me rephrase that. Like, when you think it's the end of the world because somebody like doesn't like you, or like people don't like, one person doesn't like you, I mean, it makes a little bit more sense in that aspect, and that's what I mean by magnification. It's like where your whole world kind of ends. Yeah, or just being, yeah, like bullying again still exists, but like, don't again jump to conclusions. A lot of these things go hand in hand with each other. So that's what I mean by like, when you stub your toe, like, oh my god, I'm going to die. I mean, you just stub your toe. Unless you stubbed your toe into like a cheese grater, I think we're gonna have problems. Like a really toe-sized cheese grater. Minimization, for like another one, would be where, like for this one, would be where, I guess if you're with an argument with like someone that's really important, or not even an argument, if you're talking about something like, say you're pregnant and you're trying to get your significant other to be a little bit more supportive. Yeah. No, and it's fine. Like, if it's worrying too much about other people's opinions is a bad thing, and you're right, I don't think it should bother you. Like, a lot of people still consider other people's opinions to a degree, but it takes distinct types of people, like not even distinct, like just takes other types of people to really like make sure that they don't let that affect them, you know. Like, it's nice to be conscious about things, but like with for other people that actually matter, but it doesn't really matter to others that don't even know you, you know. So, and I really do understand that, you know, it's easy to allow that to bother you. So minimization, so back to that, is where, like, if you're trying to like stress the importance of, you know, having this baby, but then your significant other is just like, yes, whatever. To a degree, that is type of minimization, because they're shrugging it off, saying like, oh yeah, you're just pregnant, NBD. Yeah, but this is really important to you, and you could see, because that has something to do with the other person, it's not, you know, it's not insane most of the time. You know, you're talking about the future of this child, but this person's kind of just blowing it off. And that's what I mean. Like, if the other person does that, that's the minimization. They're trying to make that idea less important. So this one's going to be really interesting to describe. So emotional reasoning is the second one Yeah, because magnification and minimizing was that first one I talked about. But yeah, emotional reasoning is where you assume that because you feel a certain way, then it's got to be true. One example is like, I feel embarrassed, so I must be stupid. No, first off, no, that's not how that works. The one big way is, no, I guess one good example of emotional reasoning, aside from that quote, right, that prompt, is saying, I'm trying to think here. I feel I can't. Oh, I feel at a loss to solve this puzzle, so I must be really stupid. Kind of an overgeneralization because you can't solve a puzzle, but because you're allowing yourself to get you're reasoning with yourself via emotions, you have to have a healthy balance of the two, understanding that you have your cognitive side and your emotional side, in this sense. And I'm not saying that's like a thing, but like you're ruled by like both of your emotions and your actual like realistic thoughts, and you can actually put them together and make those like intertwine and work for you. But when you just allow yourself to get caught up in your emotions, that's the circular reasoning where you're just like, I feel like nothing is working with my stream, so I feel really useless right now. No, you shouldn't ever think about it that way. Like, don't use emotional reasoning as a way to put yourself down. Like, things happen, not like a lot of things happen not because of you, really. It happens, you know. Don't put yourself into that thought. You know, it's easier said than done, but it's just something to keep a note when you're feeling the way you feel. Don't add something else to make you feel worse, because we all have that focus on misery, which I'm actually going to be talking about in another video. That we just happen to go towards misery because that's the thing a lot of us think, that's something that we all know more so than anything, that we just subconsciously do. So it's water, don't worry, it's not alcohol. So the next one is the should and must. So it all comes down to word choice for thoughts. It's like the difference between saying, I guess I'm going to be a doctor, or I am going to be a doctor. And I'm going to give you a second. Which sounds better? I assume the last one, right? The one where it says I am, and then I should. That's fair. I like water too. I like water. So using should, must, or ought to, like OUGHT, right? That has the potential to make you feel guilty. We apply shoulds to other people, and it usually gets us into a mode of frustration. So like the big examples, like when you're watching like animes or shows where people, and you'll actually see this in a lot of the dramas, I guess Law and Order, maybe, or maybe even excuse me, Law and Order, or probably something else really, but oh god, not Brooklyn Nine-Nine, that's too funny. I'd say Hawaii Five-0 maybe, because there are some deaths in there. Anyways, but saying I should have, right? Like I should have done this, I should have done that. That is a lot of regret. That's a lot of guilt, saying that you should have done this, I must have done this or something. It just shows that like you should have been there so that person wouldn't have died. When all I'm going to put out there is that you shouldn't do that, because it's hard to explain, but when you use the shoulds and the must have, like I must have done something wrong, then you're putting yourself into this predicament where like, what are the things you could have done different? When you think about it, when you have a failure, when you fail at something in life, it doesn't matter what it is, when you fail at something in life, The general idea is to make sure that you don't really ignore it, but you look at it, understand what happened. Now, and I've noticed that I'm not saying understand what you did. No, it's understand what happened that was more than likely out of your control, and then learn from that. So almost always it's just going to be something that's not like really death defying or like a life or death situation, but there's going to be a lot of failures in your life where you're going to go and say, I should have done this, when I mean it's normal to think that, but are you going to don't bask in that guilt for the rest of the time, you know? Like, focus on what happened and how you can move forward. And that's what you should avoid when you're saying I should have, or I must have done this, I must do this. I mean, like, saying like I must like, oh yeah, I have to do this, like that's normal to say because you have to go, like, say, do errands like groceries or laundry. But I digress. When you say must have done something, or I ought to have done something, that means that you should have done that. You felt compelled to do a specific action to get you out of that feeling. You're putting yourself in. Most of the time they don't really, like, you don't really need to do that. So just avoid using shoulds and musts and oughts, because you don't want to feel guilty about that later on, especially when it has nothing to, I don't want to say do with you, but just nothing to really, like, nothing that you really should blame yourself for. Labeling. So labeling is the fourth one. The out of the 10, not the ninth one. It is assigning labels to ourselves or other people. This is pretty normal. Like, this is basically name calling. All right. Like, again, I'm pretty sure you've been there. Like, I want you to, like, think about the time that you actually labeled somebody. Oh man, that fucker's an idiot. Like, what a dumb douchebag. Like, oh man, I'm so useless right now because I can't do anything. And that's, again, goes back to the emotional reasoning. I feel useless, so I must be incompetent. Which, again, don't label these things. That's another unhelpful thinking style to put there. I mean, like, it's fine, especially with this type of culture that we live in. We live in the American culture, and I'm pretty sure there's probably a couple other countries. Canada is actually one of them, where you could, you know, call someone another name and they're gonna be totally okay with it, because that's, like, you guys have that bond. Like, the two of you, like, or multiple people have that bond. But in the general idea of, like, you not knowing anybody, or you have no idea who the hell somebody is, like, down the street from you, you have no right in saying, like, what a wow, that guy looks like a loser, what a dummy, what an idiot, or something like that. Like, and even consists of labeling yourself as well. Like I said earlier, like, again, don't label. That's a huge self-esteem killer. Just saying that you're stupid. So that, just be wary of labeling yourself and others, because it can be very detrimental to how you think about yourself, like, in the long run, and others as well. Lastly, the one I can actually attest for, because I have suffered from this a lot, is personalization. And again, it goes to the shoulds and musts, and a lot of that's word choice. Personalization is saying, this is my fault. I had a dog that died when I was a kid, and he was one of my favorite dogs. His name was Bobby, but I taught him how to jump into a pool, or the pool that we had in our backyard. And the worst thing was that it started snowing, because, you know, when you live in Michigan, it's not really a good time when it comes to snow. But this is back in the time where I don't let when we let the dogs out. Or my family let the dogs out anyway, and because dogs are such good learners, when we were out, my mom always told us that that Bobby ran away, but she found his frozen body in the pool. And so my biggest thing was that I blamed myself for one of my dogs jumping into a place that I taught him to jump into, and then when it was snowing, didn't know the difference, and he froze to death. And that's the thing. Like, in some sense, you know, I blamed it, and I still take responsibility for teaching him that, but his death wasn't really completely my fault, you know? Like, and that's what you need to avoid. Like, you can get so caught up in something bad that happens that you really just want to blame yourself. This is my fault is such a huge that is like a huge guilt phrase. Like, if you have so much guilt, that saying this is my fault, this I am to blame, you know? See, there's a difference between taking responsibility for something and then blaming yourself for something, in my personal opinion. Because when you blame yourself for something, you're trying to say that you're sorry for something you never really did, you know, or like you didn't really have control over. And that's not the case. Like, death is something you don't have control over. Taking responsibility is that part where when you do an action that you thought was right, but it turned out not being like one of your best moments of judgment. Taking responsibility is that where you're saying, I'm very sorry for this. Hold on, I'm gonna get my cat. All right, cat. Pixel, you're gonna join us today. Oh god, everything's shaking. So yeah, and that's what that is. So personalization is where you just blame yourself for everything. And just remember that you really shouldn't do that. Unless you really, like, killed somebody, then, I mean, yeah, blame yourself because you literally did it. But I'm just talking about a means of, like, when you're given the benefit of the doubt. Cat? Okay. So, anyways, that's all of them. So the ones that we covered, the last 5 we covered today is magnification and minimization. So that's kind of the blowing things out of proportion, or like sweeping things under the rug, for lack of a better term, which they are both just as equally bad. Emotional reasoning is the second one, where when you use an emotion to explain how you feel, which, I mean, yeah, use an emotion to explain how you feel, duh, but you generalize and you think that you are this one because you feel this way. Like, oh, it's like the toxic masculinity thing where you say, oh man, I'm crying, I must be gay. No, everybody cries, guy. Like, calm down, you know? So that's the emotional reasoning thing. Hey, how's it going? The third one is should and must. All right, so just avoiding to use those because that does lead to guilt or guilty or frustration, or things that we're talking about just unhealthy thinking styles, and how to, like, kind of go around, like, think about how you perceive some of those things in mental health things, like for anxiety. So critical words like should, must, and ought is where that's where you start to feel guilty about something, and that leading into personalization, where you say this is my fault, when, like I said earlier, you can't blame yourself or even other people for that matter for something that in this case is not your fault, or was your fault. So not sure. So cough cough, I swept all the bad of me and Amy on relationship. Yeah, you honestly, like, that's the thing. It's always important, especially I have a thing for relationships, like healthy relationships later, but in a counseling-esque form for basically I mean, yeah, like, shouldn't blame yourself on, I mean, like, death is something that unless the other person did it, you shouldn't ever blame yourself or the other person. Like, those are just one of the things that, like, literally things just happen, if that makes sense. So finally, labeling. All right, don't assign a label to yourself. Don't say you're stupid. Don't call other people stupid. You could joke with your closest friends because we live in this society, you know, like, and it's really weird, but, like, whatever makes you feel like it. So don't label yourself, especially when you think you're like, oh, I'm stupid, I'm dumb, man, I wish I wasn't as I wish I wasn't as useless, you know. Avoid that. That's such a huge self-esteem killer. All right, so those are the last 5 helpful thinking styles. One of the things that I guess to, like, kind of like finish the rest of this, because I'm gonna go game after this, but I just wanted to make sure that every Monday I get some of these out because there are people that need to know. And I could have done better with the explanations, but I'm hoping that this is good for what it's worth. There's this cross-sectional information sheet that I have where you think about you consider all the thinking types and you put yourself in the situation. So what did you feel anxious about? Where were you? When was this? What was it? Who were you with? You know, think about that situation. Second is the physical. When you were anxious, how did you feel? Like physically feel? What did you notice in your body? Like what kind of sensations did you experience? So when you're going to consider some of the anxiety things, when you consider anxiety in general, make sure you're considering how you feel physically. All right, get out of here, fat butt. Cognitively, so that's like, what did you go through in your mind? Like what went through your mind when you were anxious? What did you that say or mean about that situation you were in, you know? Just so that's going along the lines of like, I don't feel like I'll know people because I'm an awkward person, so I must be weird. No one will like me because of that, and you know, that's a lot of those thinking styles, the cognitive areas. So behavioral, how did you react to it, for lack of a better term? Like what did you do to avoid or actually follow through with that, like with the response? So it's like saying if you avoided people, then that means you just don't go to parties anymore. That's okay, you know, that's how you reacted to it. Is it healthy, unhealthy? I don't know. It's whatever makes you feel good, but that's a behavioral part. And then lastly, it's the emotional. What emotions did you feel when you felt anxious? You know, and honestly, anxiety can make you feel different things. Like I can feel depressed being anxious. I can feel scared. I can feel ashamed. And going to a party, for example, like I just felt so embarrassed and ashamed of being in this area, you know. So consider this when you are going, and here's what it is. I feel like I could do this better, but consider, whoa, God. But consider it when you have that bits of anxiety, when you're like dealing with social anxiety. Think about what I just said. Where are you right now? What are the physical things you're feeling? What are the cognitive things that are going through your mind? What are you thinking? How do you feel emotionally? Like, how is this making you feel? And then lastly, what are you going to do about it? You know, there's a way that you could just get around or even work through that anxiety that you have. And this is just one of many things that you could do that will allow you to have a little bit of more better control with really your thoughts, your reactions, just being aware about those issues that come. So, yeah, that's it. Basically, just understand that there's these thinking styles that just happen about that happen, that you just need to be aware that it doesn't like kind of run or ruin your life in a way, because a lot of these can lead to like just lower self-esteem, lower confidence. I think I had more, but I think I'm just tired at this point. But yeah, so a little slightly longer than the last video, but I just want you guys to know that if you ever want any more information, I am more than willing to help you out along with that, because this is also, I mean, like I said, it's something that I personally enjoy talking to people about, and because I also have my own fair share of issues, just like everybody else. But I think people should know that, because, you know, I guess the biggest thing is that when I was starting to deal with my own depression and anxiety, that I learned that other people out there has their own issues, and a lot of the times someone there should be someone out there that should really you know, someone out there you should really like relate to. And I think that's the thing. A lot of us just need someone to relate to. That's kind of, especially in my end anyway, that's what gave me the courage to really push on. So yeah, just don't feel alone in your thoughts. Like, if you ever need somebody to talk to, if you ever think about some of those thinking styles, you know. Don't like think about, just go ahead and think about it in a way that allows you to look at it in an objective state, because I guarantee you once you have a better understanding of it, you'll be able to control a lot of what runs through your head. So anyways, thank you very much, guys, for watching. Again, if you need anything from me, I am just a message away. You're more than welcome to follow and subscribe. I don't mind talking to you guys. That's what I'm here for. I mean, that's what I want to do in life, you know. Wow, I had like other things. Yeah, and I agree. Realizing that there's anybody else, realize that there's a lot of other people that may have similar situations that you do. It would be really cool, and it'll just help you. So I don't know why I repeated that, but anyways, thanks again for watching, guys. If there's something that you have questions about, you are more than welcome to message me, and I can actually make another video or stream about it. But yeah, I also don't mind if you want to talk. So take care, guys. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of this video, and I hope to see you guys really, really soon in the next stream. All right. Oh, and I forgot, if there's anything I need to define more, just let me know, and I'll try to define that later on. All right. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good night. Have a great Monday, and have a great rest of your week. All right. I'll see you on streams.